Ladies and gentlemen, Pablo Capra. We're here to discuss Proust. Where do we start?
It's a very long book.
Many pages, many words, many years of...
It has two titles, Remembrance of Things Past, or
In Search of Lost Time.
In Search of Lost Time, which is the better title, because it's not a casual remembrance of the past. It's really like a spiritual search and a journey for a spiritual truth, basically, about reality, about what is contained in our past and how it makes our reality.
When we talk about Proust, we talk about the Proust experience. Because the book is one thing, and what happens to you reading the book is another thing. Because as deep as he goes, in a way like psychoanalysis, as deep as he goes, as deep as you go. And kind of, let's start with kind of what was happening while you went through this process.
In the beginning, I was just mostly intrigued by the kinds of things he would write about. It turned me on to looking at the world in more detail, and looking at certain events in life that you wouldn't think of as mysterious or miraculous because they're just so ordinary, but in fact that they have this unpredictability about them, and it's just like a little shock value. There's something about the everydayness that he captures that it has a universal mystery somehow that radiates in these quiet scenes, conversations or remembrances of his hometown.
This is the most lifelike book, the most full of life book, and what happens is as in fiction, fictional things tend to happen and life goes as fiction. What happens in this, although it's a work of fiction, it goes as in life. I think we were talking about the scene with the priest today.
In this scene, he's in this male brothel in Time Regained in the end of the book, and he's watching a soldier and a priest who are like flirting together. Evidently, the soldier was teasing his companion about the discrepancy between his conduct and his habit, for the other, with a serious air, raising a finger towards his hideous face, with the gesture of a doctor of theology, said sententiously, "What do you expect? I am not," and then Proust writes in parentheses, "I expected him to say a saint," end parentheses, and the priest finishes, "a good girl." And it's just these things that you couldn't really make something like that up. It's these outcomes to these scenes in his book that are just so extraordinarily just off the wall, or just in a totally different direction from the way that like a fiction writer thinks about putting something together in a beginning, middle, end. These stories, like they're amorphous, and they're like life changing into completely new stories all the time. It's really such a close study of life. It's not like any fictional work. It's much closer to life, and therefore much more much more meaningful. I like how in Proust the reality always defies his ability to account for what's going to happen. He's always like faced with a mystery at every turn.
And in order to write good fiction, you have to have verisimilitude. You have to have the ring of truth. And I don't know, what you absorb from this is you look at reality with a minute detail, because he was such a detailist. He was really a fine. In other words, when you're looking through his lens, you're seeing a deeper level than you're probably trained to in your own lens, and you get a sense of the rhythm of reality that he captures so much. So that foreshadowing, people who are less heroic in life sometimes turn out to be heroes. People who are very heroic in life sometimes turn out to be cowards. Just the kind of quirk and twist that life gives you that fiction rarely does, except in very skilled hands.
That's right. This book is really different in that the characters are not good or bad or one way or the other. They're like they become all kinds of different characters throughout the course of the book, and it's that kind of attention to detail over a passing of time. It's kind of like the opposite of minimalism. It's like a maximalism, the way he packs in so much about life and about people that they're like protean, you can never really understand what life is or who these people really are that he hangs out with, because over time they go through so many changes. It's really dramatic.
If it takes them through a lifetime. This is, most books they ride off into the sunset at the end, or they kiss and boom, fade out, lights out. Well, this takes you feel like you've gone through their life. They have their peaks and their valleys, they have their great moments, and then, Swan, the end of Swan was just tragic.
Indeed? I should like to know, Madame de Guermantes asked him, how 10 months before the time you can tell us that a thing will be impossible. My dear Duchess, I will tell you if you insist upon it, but first of all, you can see that I am very ill. Yes, my little Charles, I don't think you look at all well. I'm not pleased with your colour. But I'm not asking you to come with me next week. I asked you to come in 10 months. In 10 months one has time to get oneself cured, you know. At this point a footman came in to say that the carriage was at the door. Come, Oriane, to horse, said the Duke, already pawing the ground with impatience, as though he were himself one of the horses that stood waiting outside. Very well. Give me in one word the reason why you can't come to Italy. The Duchess put it to Swann as she rose to say good-bye to us. But, my dear friend, it's because I shall then have been dead for several months. According to the doctors I consulted last winter, the thing I've got, which may, for that matter, carry me off at any moment, won't in any case leave me more than 3 or 4 months to live, and even that is a generous estimate, replied Swann with a smile, while the footman opened the glazed door of the hall to let the Duchess out. What's that you say? Cried the Duchess, stopping for a moment on her way to the carriage and raising her fine eyes, their melancholy blue clouded by uncertainty. Placed for the first time in her life between 2 duties as incompatible as getting into her carriage to go out to dinner and showing pity for a man who was about to die, she could find nothing in the code of conventions that indicated the right line to follow, and not knowing which to choose, felt it better to make a show of not believing that the latter alternative need be seriously considered, so as to follow the first, which demanded of her at the moment less effort, and thought that the best way of settling the conflict would be to deny that any existed.
Let's go back to some of your other favorite places, some of the things that knocked you out.
He says, in the morning it was as if, taking advantage of our being asleep, the house had miraculously flown. I awoke in different weather, beneath another clime. We do not begin to work as soon as we disembark in a strange country to the conditions of which we have to adapt ourselves. Each day for me was a different country. I kind of butchered that. But this idea that, time's passage, it doesn't bring us farther ahead necessarily. It really changes everything. It's even we are changed, the people we meet are changed. Even it seems to him as if his house has flown away to a whole other place, and the next morning it's in a different place. He is not looking for a time when these people were younger or he was younger. It's really looking for a different world. It's not really of this world, and that gives it a spiritual search to the search for lost time. And I think in the end, I don't know if we're going to jump ahead here, but his realization as he trips on the sidewalk, I think.
On some pebble stones going into the party at the Guermantes at the end.
And suddenly he has this synesthesia moment where all these sensations overlap in his mind as he remembers.
Involuntary memory was the clue that he used to go back and write this book, because we were saying when he tried to write this book before, trying to memorize, recreate or look outside of himself, he was unable to do this. When he stumbled on the idea of involuntary memory and what was locked away and ways of unlocking this stuff, that's when he began to create as an artist.
And for him, art is the complexity of how dissimilar things overlap in time. Well, as a poet, I want to say what Proust means to me.
Okay.
I think this is a really wonderful explanation of why rhymed poetry, which I usually write, is so beautiful. Proust says, "Is it not already a first element of ordered complexity, of beauty, when, on hearing a rhyme, that is to say, something that is at once similar to and different from the preceding rhyme, which is prompted by it, but introduces the variety of a new idea, one is conscious of two systems overlapping each other, one intellectual, the other prosodic." And I think this that he points out that a rhyme is not only it doesn't only have a prosodic beauty of two words that sound the same. It also has an intellectual beauty of putting two dissimilar words and concepts together and showing this kind of harmony between them. It's not just an audible thing; it's an intellectual thing also that your mind has to make between rhymed words. And I think that's a good point that's missing from a lot of academic understanding of poetry. It's an organic work, and at the same time, what I was trying to say is that it's a very technical work, as far as the style, the method is very deliberate, and that's for me what makes it poetic, almost a work of poetry. It's a very cool blend between fiction, between prose and poetry. And as a poet, to see a prose writer do that really drew me in.
The aeroplanes which I had seen some hours earlier, looking as if they were the brown spots made by insects against the blue of the evening sky, now passed like flaming torches through the darkness of the night, which was further deepened by the partial extinction of the street lamps. After the raid the night before, when the sky had been more full of movement than the land, it had calmed down again like the sea after a storm. But it had not yet recovered its absolute tranquillity. Aeroplanes still shot up like rockets to join the stars, and searchlights moved across the sky they divided as if they were the pale stardust of wandering Milky Ways. The aeroplanes became so much part of the constellations that one could almost imagine oneself in another hemisphere, seeing new stars. The night was as beautiful as in 1914, when Paris had been threatened previously. The moonlight seemed like a soft, continuous magnesium flare, allowing one to record for the last time nocturnal images of those beautiful assemblages, the Place Vendôme and the Place de la Concorde, to which my fear of their being destroyed by bombardment gave, by contrast with their still intact beauty, a sort of plenitude, as if they were offering up their defenceless architecture to the coming blows.